Welcome to Inside Flair, which stands for Flourish in Life Through Art and Resources for Endometriosis. I'm your host, Priscilla, and on this podcast, we talk about the ins and outs of what it's like to live with endo and chronic illness, using art as a tool for coping and healing, and the power of storytelling as a way to spread awareness about the disease. Today, I have the pleasure of meeting with Chelsea of Getting the Better of Endo, new to the Flair community, who will be sharing with us today her story, her journey with Endo, along with her experience in advocacy and her ideas for the future of Flair. Welcome, Chelsea. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell
Hi,
us a
thank
little
you.
bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to connect. And one of my biggest things I think I love about doing what I do is connecting with the community and seeing like who I get to meet next. So I'm really excited that we have connected and we have begun this other exciting journey. And it helps branch off, more of me, which I'm really excited about as well. So again, my name is Chelsea and I'm a mother, I'm a wife and an artist and a patient advocate who has become really dedicated in sharing lived experience, policy, focused changes and as well as like the research that can go into those policy changes. And I began kind of sharing my story after my diagnosis in 2018 and it turned into getting the better of endometriosis just on Instagram and just kinda documenting what I was kinda going through and the answers I finally had after 16 years, and it's really flourished, and I had to go beyond that kinda, like, influencer, I realized I needed to do more, and that's where I, again, began connecting and collaborating and led me to where I am today. So, I'm really excited.
It's so nice too that I just kind of same thing. I was like, I need to do more after this surgery. And when I put my idea out there, you were like, hey, I'm doing something with art and endo too. And you were the first. And I was just like, wow, like
Yep.
this is
Let's
so
do it.
cool. I'm so tell us a little bit more about your journey with endo. So when did the symptoms start or how all the way, like when did you get your diagnosis? Bring us there.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was about 2018 when I officially got my diagnosis, and that was after 16 years. And I was 24, almost 25 at that point. So 16 years at the age of 24. I was about 9 years old. Looking back now, realizing that's when my symptoms were really starting. Around 8, 9 years old, upset stomach all the time, constantly just like feeling off, sick, sluggish, and then I started passing out on the playground, and, they had no answers for me, and then over time, it kinda started becoming, "Oh, this is behavioral. Oh, this is mental health." At that same time, our family was kinda going through a divorce. There was a lot of trauma happening around me, so that was kind of the blame for my symptoms and what I was feeling internally and why I was so sick all the time. And we kinda went with that. We ended up doing a scope, I think it was about 10, 11 years old, down my throat just, to check, and there was a lot of inflammation. I don't know how stomach inflammation and throat inflammation and all of that would happen just from outside trauma. Outside looking in, I do see the inflammatory responses and stuff, but it's not causing exactly everything I was going through. I ended up kinda giving up on the doctors actually helping me for a while, but that's also when I think my mental health did get the worst because I started believing them, and I started believing that all of this pain that I was feeling that was getting worse as I was progressively aging, going through high school, I was losing myself, and I couldn't understand how I could change everything, happening outside to change what was happening inside. And I ended up being put into mental hospitals as well in high school. So, the time that they tell you is supposed to be the best time of your life, it was not for me. It was very scary, hit or miss. And then of course when students started finding out where I was for long periods of time and I would come back to school, then of course that would become a topic of discussion, and I was kinda done with everything on a social level already before I even graduated high school.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. It doesn't make it feel any better even to know,
No.
sometimes that other people had a similar experience.
Yeah.
I will add that I also missed a lot of school, and same thing, it's like, I don't wanna talk about it, it's embarrassing, but what else am I supposed to do? And like you said, you started believing. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I wanna feel better so bad that I'm gonna trust these people, like, the doctors, the
Mhm.
professionals, and just even so, think about how lost we're lost, how lost our
Yeah.
parents are who are supposed to
Yeah.
help us,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I know, one thing that always struck me really odd for me was the perfect attendance award, because how are chronic illness people and people with disabilities and stuff supposed to achieve this? Like that award already gives people with disabilities a like, they're gonna fail even in a work setting, if they can't get this one award for perfect attendance, how are they going to be able to have a good attendance at work? And that's where I began to struggle when I started working. I actually ended up by my junior year, I started doing half because I doubled up the first semester of my junior year just to get classes done. I just wanted to get out of there. So in my second year of senior year, I was only there half time. So my junior year, I also kind of started branching out and doing some of the community college stuff because I was tired of it all. And then I started getting a job. I was working at a fun park, and I was, like, helping with, like, go-karts and, putt-putt and stuff like that, and I also was working at McDonald's while juggling school, and I was also playing soccer, and again, back then, I was constantly doing all the things, and it was just I had to keep my mind busy, I had to keep my body busy, and if I didn't, I was succumbing to the thoughts and the doubt that was surrounding me, and even in soccer, like, at that award ceremony, like, the coach I think it was my senior year, it was senior awards, and the coach was handing out, like, things that reminded her of, each player, and I got a first aid kit. Everybody else got really cool stuff, and I got a freaking first aid kit, and I
What?
was just
What?
okay, because I was constantly twisting my ankles, which now I know is the Ehlers-Danlos and the lack of, support and stuff, but, like, I was constantly hurt, I was missing, I was in and out of hospitals and just to receive that as, like, almost like a gag when all the other girls on the team were getting, like, cutesy little memorabilia, it was like I felt like a laughing stock, and so it was really hard to navigate not even having a diagnosis or understanding what was wrong with me at all in a world that, like, also chose not to understand me.
I was just about to say that's not the best way to show support, right?
Mm-mm.
Even if you don't know how to support someone, right? Like, I still think that was not the best choice.
No.
Man, it is beyond let me rephrase, it blows my mind what you and I and so many other women are capable of doing to push through, and
Yeah,
like you said, the idea that not succumb to all the negativity around us, but also there's that side of, "I don't want this disease or all these bad things, my body's not working right, I'm just gonna pretend," or, kinda figure out how to navigate as if it's not consuming everything, but then at the same time, that's impossible,
yeah,
and that's not healthy.
no.
So, when was your, appointment where you first felt a professional was listening to you about, "Okay, maybe this is something beyond," right? Like, we've gotta
It
do
took a
something about
very
it.
long time, and until I found that person, I even went, like, through domestic violence because he was also saying, like, what the doctors were saying, and I wasn't I was really bad at that point. It was after graduation, and I was just not well, and I was losing weight. I was sick constantly every morning. I couldn't get out of bed, and I was looked at as lazy, and I would go to the emergency room for help, and then they would just be like, "Nothing's wrong," so then I come home, and then, like, it was just like, "Well, they can't find anything wrong with you," so then it would go into that route, so I had to go through all of that, And then I sat probably for about 2 years trying to navigate because I had a back injury from the domestic violence, so I was trying to navigate, like, what to do with that, and I finally, within those 2, 3 years, I found my husband now, and he was very supportive and understanding in, like, ways I had never thought could even be possible, and I was able to go back and get my back addressed, but they said I was too young, which now I know, like, it was another dismissal for that factor, but I need to go through and have thoracic work to work on my upper, thoracic spine area, and they said I was too young for that, so I went through all this gaslighting, and then they stuck me with 2 spinal cord stimulators, so I have, like, 1 to get, like, my lower area and 1 for my higher area because I have discs from my upper all the way down to my middle sporadically protruding, and there's 2, 1 in my upper and 1 in my lower, that are slightly pressing on my spinal cord. So they thought that
Jeez.
the
Now
stimulators.
that was addressed before any endo symptoms?
Yeah, because
Wow.
that for me, at that point, because I was still thinking that all those other symptoms were not real, but for me, that injury was real, so I was
Right.
addressing that, and I wanted to be fixed because it was that constant reminder, so it was really hard battle living, and it still is because it's still constant pain, but I'm coping better with it and able to move past it and understand more, but that was just really interesting to try to navigate and advocate for myself after being through that trauma, and also the trauma previously from the medical system. So, like, I was scared to even go back in and, like, talk to them about my back because I didn't know, like, was this gonna be pinned on, like, is this also my mental health? Like, am I over exaggerating what happened to me? Like, that's where I started going. So, having my husband and boyfriend at the time, be there with me, and also my mom, and they have also been my biggest advocates aside when I couldn't speak for myself or I couldn't became so frustrated, I couldn't find the words and I began stuttering, and then they would look at me like I was crazy because I was just like, because I can't find the words to express how frustrated I am with them. But then they started labeling mom, as like she's enabling her daughter, and she became a problem, and it wasn't really until my husband came into play that people were kinda like, "Okay, yeah," and then I got more confidence, which led me to do more of that research. So after I got those spinal cord stimulators, I was just like, "Okay." I'd had my first son, or my son, my firstborn at that time, right before I got my spinal cord stimulators, actually. So, like, I had him, and then I was like, "This pain's really bad," and come to find out a lot of that pain was also the endometriosis.
That's where I was gonna come in and kinda ask
So
because I can see how, like, that frustration also inside I mean, I put myself in your shoes and I think, like, "Hold on, are these related? No, they can't be. Wait, which one
it's
do I
yeah.
focus on? Which one are they gonna actually believe me more on? Where do I
Yep,
start here?"
yep.
And I'm sure that your partner and your mother, I mean, felt just as helpless at some point. I mean, that's for
Mhm.
another episode. I
Oh,
swear I
yeah.
wanna focus on partners and just what they go through, really, is their journey with endo. But, so back to where you are at this point in your story, what year is this now?
At that point, it was about, my son was born in 2017, January, and I had those stimulators put in July of 2017. And then come 2018, I was starting heavily doing research, and it probably took me about 6 months of research, and by Nov September, it was, I was talking to my gynecologist, and I was like, "Hey, I realized, like, bowel endometriosis is a thing, and I kind of feel like some of these symptoms really feel like me." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we can get you in and take a look, explore a little bit." And, like, that's exactly what he did. I went in at the end of September for an exploratory surgery with him, and he had me under for 35 minutes, which my mom was shocked. Everybody was like, "35 minutes and you didn't find anything?" He said I was clean as a whistle, and I needed to work on my mental health and my diet. And I was just like, "What the," you know? And I could have easily taken what he said and just continued on. But, like, I had that gut feeling that little annoying voice, like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to keep looking. And I literally went home from that failed surgery that day and started looking, and I found more of the community online, and I found
Wow.
Nancy's Nook, and then I found like different surgeons that were like within, at least 5 hours of me. And one of the ones that was 2 hours away was able to get me in within a week. I got in within a week, and she was like that experience, like being heard, being able to actually talk and share things without being interrupted, and having like a whole almost hour to connect and have her understand what's going on. She pushed insurance to have an emergency laparoscopy because she believed that there were things that were missed. And within a month, I was in for that emergency surgery. So, like, I had Doctor 1 who said nothing's there. And then a month later, Doctor 2 said that she found endometriosis taking over my colon, rectum, and bladder. So, just in 1 month, that was 2 different doctor
Wow.
perspectives. That is what told me something's not right. How many other people could this be happening to? How many people are listening to like a basic doctor's response and just moving on with their life like I could have? I could have died. I was sickly. People were thinking I was on drugs because I did not look well. I was losing weight and I was throwing up all the time. I was not well. And then when she removed it through excision, of course. And right after that, about December, it was around my birthday, I started having an increase of rectal bleeding. Now I was already like bleeding rectally a little bit before, and then it just like massively, and I freaked out. So I went to the emergency room, and they didn't really know what it was. And then from that emergency room visit, I got connected with the colorectal doctor that basically saved my life. And he was like, I can't look at you in the ER like I need to, they don't have all my stuff here. He's like, I can get you in tomorrow. Come into my office first thing in the morning and we will take a look. So I went home from the emergency room, went to his office, and went through the nice, uncomfortable, lift table, get your butt up in the air, arch it back for the colorectal doctor, and
Here we go.
he, he found 3 massive golf ball sized hemorrhoids that were like internal, very deep internally. And because of the disease that was removed on my bowels, there was constricted blood vessels. And so those blood vessels finally got life. And so those hemorrhoids were able to release. So all of that
I
blood
know what
was
you're
stripped.
talking about. I know what you're talking about. Obviously, not your specific
Yeah.
detailed case, but for any listeners that aren't as familiar with bowel endometriosis, how it is addressed and carefully or not carefully treated during surgery can have a major impact on the rest of the surrounding organs, especially because each doctor has a different approach. I know my surgeon, this last surgeon, was very detailed in explaining to me. So I can't imagine how that one surgeon, who I'm sure at the beginning of this seems like she was trying to help, but depending on what tool is used, the closer they get to the lining of the bowel, I mean, it can go one way or the other, right?
Mhm.
So we're at surgeon number 3 here, or
Surgeon number
right?
2. Well,
Okay.
yes. Yep. Nope, you're right.
Doctor,
3.
I'm going doctor 3.
Colorectal is
Now,
3. Yep.
did he was he able to offer you any explanation? Like, did he say this is post-operative, or kind of
Well,
was he just like, I'm going to
honestly,
take care of you from here?
as a colorectal doctor, he was shocked to hear that endometriosis on the bowel was a thing. So I was also able to educate him, which like really brought us like really close. Like I love this man. His name is Dr. Main, and he's in Columbus, Ohio, off of Main Street, mind you. So it was easy to remember. But he he was always willing to talk and like take information, and I got to tell him like what I was doing in the community, and he was always so inspired. But like he would always bring in like his students. So like almost every appointment there would be like 3 or 4 students in. It's like I felt like just an educational case, and like I was just telling him,
I'm
you know,
I am
'cause
so happy that we're having this conversation right now because you're the only other person that so I always tell my husband and my friends too, it's the residents, right? The
Mhm.
anesthesiologist has a resident, the OB has a resident, the GI has a, and it's
Yep,
like a freaking party in
yep,
my OR rooms. I
yep.
love it. I love
Mm.
it.
Add a little
Shine
music.
shine the light on the positives of Endo. Bringing everybody. Okay, so what happens next?
So they, we went probably for about 2 years navigating these hemorrhoids non-surgically. We tried to do banding them with rubber bands, which he goes in and just kinda, like, plops, like, just exactly what it sounds like, pops a band over it down to the root, so then it cuts it off, and then they just pop off. However, this led to another discovery that my levator ani muscles and my pelvic floor, I had pelvic floor dysfunction. So I was already in, like, a chronic, like, tense mode. And so then when he went to go and try to do that, I was shooting up off the table. I could not tolerate it at all. So he was
Wow.
like, "Okay, we need to step back and revisit this." And but, like, now that I know that, I understand why giving birth to my first child with no answers was very rough, because I was having contractions that were, like, 30, 45 minutes long with maybe 3 to 5-minute breathers in between, and that lasted for, like, 3 or 4 hours. So I was like, it was horrible, but it's because my pelvic floor was so rattled already, and then it's going through contractions for birth, and it's just like, "Oh, we're done." Like, it was horrible. Now it all is
Yeah,
starting to make sense, you know, every
right.
little piece that I'm building to this puzzle is starting to make sense to things in my past. So
Now, did you feel that at that point you received your official diagnosis? I go like this, air quotes, because I always we as in myself and some other members of the community, it's like our badge, like your
yeah,
certificate. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, I got my
"You
my
got endo?"
official yeah, officially. But so at this point you've had that with surgery number 2, then you've had baby number 1. Now
Mhm.
did this surgeon in particular, was he able to say, "Hey, look, oh yeah, your disease is gone," or was he kind of like, "My job is to just look here. That's where I'm gonna
Yeah,
stay in my
that's
lane," type
kinda
of
where
thing?
he was, yeah, and he was interested in, like, learning more about the other stuff, but he couldn't exactly tell me that, "Yeah, this is exactly from your disease," but, like, the more I was telling him, like, what I thought, he was like, yeah, that sounds about right," you know, like, the constriction from the disease to all my stuff, developing the hemorrhoids, and now that it has a blood supply, they're just going crazy. Um, so he actually ended up referring me for Botox injections in my levator ani muscles, which is
I've
basically
heard
right around my anus.
crazy.
So he knew there was no way I was taking a needle awake.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
we did that under anesthesia. So I went in, and he also did, like, a more detailed, like, dive in, so I wasn't so uncomfortable when I'm awake, because he knows I he couldn't get a thorough look because I could not sit still. So he did that, and I will say, like, I got a good bit of relief, probably for about 3 months. And we were originally going to go in, and he was gonna do the Botox injections, and while I was under anesthesia, he was gonna band them off immediately, just at the same time. But we both had concerns about what would happen when I woke up, because I'm not reacting when he's putting the bands on and all of that stuff, and then when I wake up, if that is too much, he can't get back in there and, like, release that. So we did the Botox injections, and we felt that out, and then I went back in, and we tried the banding, and it just was not. So then we started discussing possible surgery, and then I got pregnant with my 2nd child.
hello.
Yeah, so we couldn't do surgery, and so I bled rectally that entire pregnancy, and I was high risk, and that's when I became extremely anemic and was almost on my deathbed again. So that was another scary avenue. However, the contractions were not half as bad. Um, I did both of them all natural, by the way. No medications, no, I could not deal with needles in my back with the back injury, you know, I just couldn't. So
As far as I'm just curious, as
yeah,
far as, because if anyone listening are wondering, a lot of people are like, does pregnancy help the symptoms? Like, we're told that, and some women say, like, as far as your pregnancy, I know everybody's body is different. Did you have any relief from any
no,
symptoms?
no, both pregnancies were pretty intense. I think the first one was probably a little easier on the up and out, and then the out was what was bad. However, the second one, I was sick the whole time, and I had to go in for transfusions for the first 2 trimesters, and it was pretty scary, actually. I even had a point where the placenta, before it was fully formed, um, was starting to detach from the uterine wall, so it wasn't, like, staying connected, and so I was bleeding after finding out I was pregnant, and I was like, "This is not coming from my rectal area, so this is concerning." I know about the rectal bleeding, this
Jeez.
is different bleeding,
Yeah, right.
and
Oh
they were
my
like, "You
gosh.
sure?" I said, "I am sure." Like, I know my bleeds. So that was just intense. So no, for me, it did not. The only thing I guess that did happen that was great was I didn't have my periods anymore, which that was a whole nother, inflammation process. But I also had adenomyosis, which we didn't really confirm until after that second pregnancy, which makes a lot more sense as well. So
So did you have, so he's like, okay, well, now you're pregnant. We can't do surgery. How long after were
it,
you set up for another surgery?
it was pretty quick actually, within the first 3 months after I gave birth. 4 months actually, because the
Man,
first
your
it was Feb,
body,
so I know
your
it
poor
was
body
sh
did not get a break.
no. I think
Jeez.
now I've finally gotten to, like, a homeostasis point, and I'm still only 8 months after my last surgery. So it's like I haven't I think there was one time I got maybe a full year between procedures and interjections and surgeries. It's been
Wow.
8 surgeries in 7 years total. So, like, after I
True,
gave birth yeah,
true warrior. Like,
and so many
literally.
people go through this and have 20 surgery like, the older women, they're in
Yeah.
20s, 30s. I'm just like, "Why?" And a lot of it is because they're these doctors are not trained, they have no idea what they're doing, and the complications from the disease is not even a thought process to these doctors, and that's exactly what's happening to me because the rectal bleeding after excision removal, that was a whole 'nother added complication that I did not expect. I just thought, just like everybody going in to surgery, "Alright, they're removing it, it's gonna be nice, I'm gonna have no symptoms, I'm gonna be great." That's
And
really not the reality.
for some women it is the case. I will say for my first experience, my first surgery, it was. So
Oh,
that was nice.
did you
I just, and this is another thing that for so long I didn't share my story, was because I didn't want to scare people. So for those of you listening, Chelsea and I might have the worst case scenario,
yeah,
but it
yeah,
doesn't always mean that's gonna be you. But this is something that's really important to be aware of. This way,
yeah,
what questions to ask, right?
yes,
To get a second opinion. And again, I'm all about trying to spin anything positive I can find about endo. And with this, you going through these difficult situations you find yourself in, and you're like, I'm doing research, like, no, like 35-minute look around. What? No, so with your research, at what point, what year, when did getting the better of endo come to life?
So, honestly, I made Getting the Better of Endo as the Instagram page, right after my diagnosis in October of
Wow.
2018. I immediately started because, like I said, as soon as I realized, like, 2 different doctors saw 2 different things, I was like, "What the F?" And at that point, I had already been through enough research between those 2 doctors to realize something is, like, not right, and I was already expecting, like, okay, a lot of other people have a bad first surgery and then can go and find a good surgeon and do this. So, I was slowly connecting the dots, and then, you know, as I was navigating the colorectal stuff, I was just like, this is also a continued problem, complications after excision surgery, the surgery is not one and done. These surgeries shouldn't be sold as symptom symptom management problem solvers, and that's when I began really involved with kind of like Worldwide Endo March. And I connected with the founder, and her angle of working the justice angle was really up my valley. I've always really had like a connection towards like the criminal justice TV shows and just having like that sense of justice. I don't know. And I was
It's
just
very
like, I loved
empowering.
it. Yes. And I was like, we've had all these advocacy and all these other routes focused on for so long. Nobody's thought about taking this into the hands of the law. And we can. And so I teamed up with her, and then like she was like, you're great. And so I started giving her some of the research I've done. She's been sharing research with me. And then we ended up going to DC, and they've already been in DC. They started off, marching in DC over 10 years ago. And
Wow.
going there and being able to kind of like host that myself with a smaller group of girls. This was even before our most recent DC move. So we went there and kind of pre-established things, and that's when I met Holly with the American Endo Project, and I met Hannah, and she's with Spicy, and she came and joined us, and we like just kind of developed into this policy team. And I started working more with Holly, and we all came together last year in 2025 and March, and went to DC and started. We met with 25 staffers, congressional staffers, and staff members out of 50 in the United States. So we met with half of the states in 3 days.
Amazing. Amazing.
And we went in there, with like our advocacy book that we spent basically a year almost building with research and tools and just evidence. And we took that in, and we were like, we had state pages. We broke down the statistics to how it impacted everybody, every state, financially, and how it affected their constituents, because everybody's like, well, how is this affecting our constituents? Well, so we gave them the numbers specifically for their constituents, and they loved that. And I think that's what got their attention at first. And then we started talking about the broader impact on employment and how that's giving not just a statewide, financial impact, but also a national impact, and how much money we're actually not bringing home ourselves, and that's being put out into this world, and how we're actually suffering on financial impacts. And then I was able to bring those lived experiences that I've been collecting with Satire V, which again, I connected in between all of this.
I was just gonna ask, when did you sneak in art? When did this body of, all right, it's a traveling gallery. Listeners, she hasn't gone into depth about it yet, but not just showing up, with her power and words, but actual visuals. When did you form that
So
that portfolio?
it was after the 2023 DC event. When we went to DC, we had, a smaller version of what we took to DC recently. We had research articles, blah blah blah. However, I took like a big stack. I took my stack of endometriosis deaths that I have been researching, and I also had a collection of stories that I had been collecting myself that we were going to try to get to the Justice Department. And so, like, we would go in there with all the information and stuff, and then I'd sit back with my petition, and I'd be like, and if nothing happens, we're gonna take this petition and these experiences to the Justice Department. So, like, I was just kind of there with like a little like, if you guys don't do this, we'll continue to try to do something.
Right on.
And then more posting about like those stories and the lived experiences. Just the algorithm did its thing, and I connected with Verity, which at that time was Project 514415, and it was strictly a art and literature movement trying to, tell the story of the lived experiences of endometriosis. And she was originally trying to do like this coffee table book, and it's just flourished into something more. Like we connected, we hit off, and like I've been connected to art myself just all through my life. Like, as a little girl, I was drawing on the walls, like, in between, like, I was just the artsy girl. I was in dance. I was always there until I got extremely sick, and I I lost myself, and I lost my will to be creative and artistic. And it didn't start coming back until after that diagnosis and after I started understanding myself more. So being able to connect with that part of me again was amazing. So we set out, and for about a year, we collected lived experiences through art, literature, poetry. And in July of 2024, no, 2025, last year, yes, sorry, I have to keep so many dates that I always juggle around, but July of
I hear
last year, we actually released the first book, which was the 1 in 10 poetry book, that's on Amazon, and it's strictly a bunch of poems that are split up into sections that represent, grief and different topics, and with each chapter is an image that we took that we had already, collected that represents the poems in that section. We also had a dedicated data collection section that kinda just was a open survey we had to the public intaking their lived experiences through how long did it take you to get a diagnosis? How many doctors did it take you before you actually got your diagnosis? How many ER visits? And all of that kind of stuff. And then we also ended up doing like a poetry journaling section, to kind of inspire people to create their own poems based off of their lived experience. So that was our first publication that we were able to do, and we wanted to get something out while we were still collecting stories, to kind of show progress. And then
I love that.
that's what I ended up taking, to DC last year to follow up on those lived experiences that we had, and I was able to also take it to Atlanta last year, and that's what I did my presentation and my, um, poster data presentation on, was those lived experiences data. So I was able to start off, you know, that project really strong in the public eye with data and art and voice, and that was just really big for me, and it just felt right. So
So
taking that into
powerful.
DC, yeah, and then taking that into
Wow.
DC, and then being able to just set that book on the table while we're talking to everybody, and then reference, like, "This is just a portion of our collection, and I also brought this last, a year ago or so."
Yeah, it's
It's
like,
just
this is real. This is not a
yeah,
theory. Like, look. Look at the
mhm. The lived
words in these
experiences
pages.
matter. We had my mom come with me and another one of our partners, Aubrey, her mom come, and Aubrey had just had surgery when we went to DC last year. She was in a wheelchair going into the Capitol with her
Wow.
mom. Like, she was dedicated, and I was, preparing for my surgery that I had to travel across the country for. And Holly was battling Lyme disease. So we were all like battling all of our own little, you know, wars, and we came together at the Capitol and was able to unite, and then like having my mom there, and she piped in during some of these interviews, and like that lived experience, like you said, we need to, they do matter, those perspectives matter, because it shaped my mom in ways that like I wouldn't even think about. And it's unfortunate because there are individuals out there without supportive family and without supportive, beings around them, and they're just alone. And I want those people especially to know, like, we are your community, we are your family, we are here, we understand, and like we don't want you to feel so alone. Because even though I had, my mom supporting me, and I had a couple friends who understood me but still didn't like get it, and they saw me in and out of the hospital, the mental hospital, but they would be there when I got out. It made a difference, but I still felt alone, and I can only imagine what it feels like to not have anything like that, and that's is also why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because a lot of those people who are alone, they might use their words, they might sit there and journal, they might, draw little sketches, and, like, you can express yourself in so many different ways, um, to help bring community impact, and, the more I've been seeing that and witnessing that happen before my eyes, like, I'm just like, "Wow," so then seeing what you're doing, I'm just like, "Let's continue this," because it's a movement, and it's a movement that's continuing to grow, and it's beautiful because art has been a part of history from day one. I mean,
Yeah. And can I please say thank you? I'm saying thank you for the listeners who are also saying thank you. Wow, this Chelsea's a badass. Because seriously, it's like amazing. Like, I'm so grateful. I get chills just thinking about it. And like, I want to be right up there next to you. Like, should I just buy my flight now for next year? Kind of. And there's so many things I want to touch on. I was thinking about like just the way you're describing, like going through, like you said, your own wars, but still showing up.
Yeah.
That's a common theme with so many of us with
And that's
endo.
hard
And
to do. Not
it
everybody can
is.
do that. And it
Even
took
just
me, I mean, I wouldn't, my high school self would be like, "What are you doing?" You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. I have to say too, it's like something that, and I appreciate you saying, like, we don't want you to feel alone. It's like, I'm just in week 7 post my also close to death surgery, and I'm fairly new to the endo community. I've said it. If this is your first episode, you can go back and listen to the first 3 where I'm just talking to myself and I'm sharing how my experience with it so far. Because for me, coming up with flare was at that point where I'm like, I can't be quiet anymore.
Right.
Priscilla, this is silly. Like, I was trying to kind of manage the disease and not really educating myself much more on it, because I kind of, people don't understand it and I don't understand it. It was just like, it seemed less, it was not important, but like, it just, I'll just kind of whatever. And then, I come across, starting like to really experience the most difficult pain in my entire life last year. And that's where I was like, okay, I can't keep pretending I don't have it or it's not in there. I have to do something about it. So when it came to this idea of flare, I was like, okay, like I said, I can't be quiet anymore. So what am I going to do? What can I contribute? Also, if I'm new here, like, do I have the right to start something since I'm new? And is anyone else doing this? But I'm calling it Scylla 2.0. I don't give a like, I literally am like, I give less and less shits. I'm like, I got to do this. So I put my idea out there. I'm just like, kind of, because I'm like, well, what am I good at? Like, what can I bring to the table? Well, art, because that was the original idea. I was like, I want to have, I remember I was in the ICU laying there with the fucking chest tube in my back. That hurts. And I was like, when I get out of here, I'm hosting an art show. I want to find other artists that have endo and have this show to like spread awareness. But I'm trying to bring it back to the community, and just say that I was just like the little Scylla was just listening to you at the end there when you were sharing that, like not being alone, because I'm like, gosh, like your experience sounds amazing with your support that you have. And here I am, I'm in 2026 of like years of struggling with this. And I just now am reaching out. I'm getting hugs and high fives and I love it. But it's like, wow, I can't believe how long and so for those, for any of those of you listening who maybe do feel like you're kind of in that stage right now, I want to invite you into Flare and say that, if it wasn't for connecting with Chelsea, it wouldn't have as many of these ideas flowing. And Chelsea and I, we're going to make sure all of these details are in the show notes and the book, I mean, all the things. So, but I want to leave some time and space for you to share like what your ideas, like the future of Flare as far as art and the endo community. Like I said, I feel like you're more of like a veteran like how you see the community needing or using art as a form, I say, of healing, but also coping. Like it's kind of complex because, like, I don't want people to think that I'm saying, okay, let's make art only about endo. Like, no, that's not it. It's hard. I made a whole episode where I'm talking about art in all different ways so far, right? That I have structured, I guess, for Flare at this point. But what I really want to do is knock down that wall of that, like, art is actually for everyone. And even if you don't consider yourself an artist, and it doesn't even have to be drawing or painting or collage for that matter. Like you said, if writing is your outlet, creative writing, or I've come into contact with someone who's all about like physical movement, right?
Yeah,
Like,
dance
and
is an art. Yeah.
right. So yeah, tell me, what are some
Yeah.
ideas, your visions?
I mean, so many, but I think one of the biggest things I'm really excited about is like this opportunity for workshops and bringing community together and not just, we're not just here posting on Substack, and that's not the only thing we're doing. We are definitely trying to open up and bring people in and connect, not just on online, but eventually, in person, which is the whole point of, the art show that you want to have to bring people in into a community setting to show them, you're not alone, but we also want to show the public like this is our reality and we're not going to be silent anymore. And I think that's what I'm so excited about is getting more into the public eye from just some of the public galleries that I've done. It's been just really interesting to see the public engage, and I just kinda sit back and I watch, and I'll grab, like, a picture of, like, people enjoying and stuff, but, like, hearing the engagement, I think one of the ones that sat with me the most was this group of, like, young men at the Colorado State Capitol, and they came in, and they were looking at the art, and then I had, like, brochures sitting on the shelves with the art, just why not? You need the resources to kinda connect with, and they picked it up, and they opened it up, and they were like, "Wow, I didn't know that's what this was. Wow." Like, and it was 4 young boys talking about endometriosis because
That's
of art
awesome.
brochure that they saw in the state capitol that day. So, that needs to happen, you know? Another instance that stepped out to me, it was right before I did the gallery opening, we had a rally at the state capitol outside, and one of the security guard guys that, works inside, they were roaming around outside, and he didn't come up to me. I noticed he came up to some of the stuff I had set up before the rally started, and he was really looking and, like, engaging, and I walked up and I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He was like, "This is great. This is great." He said, "People just need to know that." Then he started asking me, like, "So what is it?" And, like, I told him, I was like, "It's abnormal tissue that's rooted within any system of the body. It's a whole body condition, and it affects you in chronic ways. It impacts your work, it impacts your life." And he was just like, "So, like, how does it happen?" So I'm just like, "Well, we have a lot of different theories, retrograde menstruation used to be considered the cause, but we have a lot of evidence that, you know, proves that wrong." And I told him that I personally believe in the embryonic development theory that we're born with it and that it might be, stimulated or triggered later on in life through some sort of inflammation process, whether it be outside or inside. And
Right.
he was just like, "Yeah, that makes sense. Wow." And then he told me he just started talking to a girl and she has endometriosis. And he's like, "This is
Wow.
just great," because he was intrigued because he knew somebody that he just met who trusted
Yeah.
him enough to open herself up about that. And I had little goodie bags at the rally, and so I said, "Come here." I said, so I gave him a bag, and it had little, keychain uterus in it and resources and just cute little stickers and stuff. I said, "Here's brownie points. Give this to her." And he was like, "Oh,
Oh,
thank you so much." And I told him I had the art gallery inside and whatnot, but, like, that interaction, again, super wholesome, super engaging, and educating. So putting ourselves out here with visuals is so important because that's what's bringing people in, the
I
visuals.
love that. And I think that Substack here, this will be a great place to host. Say we have some live workshops where anyone, you'll get that notification can come on,
Yeah,
pop on more of like observer, versus like something more formal that maybe you
yeah,
like get a ticket for to show up. And
yeah,
I'm just really excited to see what comes of it and work with you because we learn so much from each other and our different stories, our different experiences. And like you said, like things that you prompt you and you're just like, oh wow, like even that little I'm imagining like what this guy looks like while you're
yeah,
talking. There's the artist in me. But I was also thinking, I was like, I literally I you're the second person I'm telling. I think my husband is the first. So the other day I'm just like kind of doing some stuff on my computer at Starbucks and I'm on my way out to go home back to my truck and I see a couple girls getting in. They're like, I don't know, they look like they're in high school or something. And I was like, oh, this sounds so weird. But again, still a 2.0, doesn't give a shit. So I go up, I'm like,
mhm,
hey, excuse me, not to be weird. And like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, have you heard of endometriosis? I know it sounds weird. I never saw myself doing this, but I was just, and they were sweet. They're like, one goes, yes, like, actually, I saw something on TikTok, and I was like, okay. And I was like, so what, and is this only other time that you're hearing this word? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, if you don't mind me asking, what did you do with that information? Like, did you keep swiping? Did you keep scrolling? And she was like, well, it was like the symptoms. And yeah, I asked the girl she was with, no, I've never heard of it. She said she was 15. And I don't know, just, I won't go into the details, but it was just that I like needed some, and I'm still like, I'm just being honest with you and anybody listening. I'm still trying to work through what my reality is today, because this past surgery has really changed me. It's not bad. My husband said it too. He's like, I like the new you. It's not bad. It's just like different. Like, I still wake up and I'm just like trying to wrap my head around what happened. And like, because
It's interesting you say that. My mom says, like, after each surgery and stuff, it's like watching me be rebirthed. And like this last time, it was like a
yeah.
complete like rebirth. She said, like, even in my face and just how I look, like everything has changed. So I totally
Yeah.
understand what you mean. Like each surgery, each piece to this puzzle is finding you, you know, so you're becoming you.
And so it's not, I guess for this whole time, like leading up in today, I'm thinking like the teacher in me, the art teacher in me is like, I want to educate. Like,
Yeah.
yes, as much as I want to educate about art, I want to educate about the disease. And I feel like I need like more professionals like you who have like this experience. I mean, again, like I said, I'm new to the community. I'm not new to art. I hope that that's way I can
Yeah.
contribute to helping others. But yeah, we just have so many amazing things brewing. And I thank you so much again for coming on,
Yeah.
for sharing, for being a part of building Flair. And there's so much more to learn,
Yeah.
to know about you. Where can people find you?
I'm all over the place. A good collection of my things can be found on my Linktree, which is just Linktree /better of Endo. And you can just kind of see a good history of other like podcasts and stuff, conversations that I've been on. I've written a couple articles and created Substack. So now we have our Substack stuff up there for Flair and myself, my personal stuff, everything for Satire V, including our open call project right now for being a woman, which is just, you know, whatever your perspective is on a political, you know, human, not, it doesn't have to be just political, but any type of perspective about being a woman, we want to hear it in that artistic, you know, perspective. So art, literature, and we're doing a special feature with actual like thread work. So
Oh,
I think we're going to try to do a certain specific collection with for the thread works, and if we can get enough little about that with the Satire V stuff. And then I have a couple of my support avenues where I have some of my creations for sale on Redbubble, as well as like some handmade beaded creations. So I got a lot going on my Linktree, but it's kind of like my catch-all. I have found that to be the easiest place to reference people.
I love it. Perfect. We'll have those links in there. And then I was gonna say, man, what was my last thought there? I missed it. But most importantly, everybody know that we're going to have her back on. This is not the last time you're going to hear from Chelsea, because that's what we're all about here on Flair.
Yeah.
We don't just stop at your story. It's not, come on, tell your story, bye, you're gone. No, it's how many different ways to tell your story. And our stories never end. They're always changing. We're living proof right there. We're just rebirth. I love it.
Yeah.
I knew reincarnation was real. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you so much. And with that, as always, keep creating, keep healing. Talk soon.
Talk soon.